The Oubliette, medieval Europe's most terrifying prison. Every medieval castle had dungeons, but only the most ruthless lords built oubliettes. No torture devices, no executioner's block, no chains, just four walls and absolute silence. Prisoners who survived every other form of medieval punishment broke within days here. But what exactly happened in a room that seemed to do nothing? An oubliette was a vertical underground prison chamber that you entered once and never left. The name comes from the French word oublier, which means to forget. That tells you everything you need to know about what happened to people who ended up down there. These stone holes were cut straight down into the earth beneath medieval castles. No windows, no doors, no escape routes. It's like someone took a grave and made it worse by keeping you alive in it. The entrance was usually hidden under trap doors or behind secret panels that looked like normal castle flooring. What made oubliettes truly horrifying wasn't just the physical design, it was the complete absence of hope. Regular prisons had rules, visiting days, maybe even appeals processes. Oubliettes had none of that. Once a lord decided you needed to disappear, you simply vanished from the world above. The basic structure was brutally simple. A narrow shaft dropped straight down into darkness. Some had waste pits carved into the bottom. Others just had cold stone floors covered with whatever remained from previous occupants. Think of it as the world's worst basement apartment. No lease required, but you can never move out. The walls were smooth and vertical, specifically designed to prevent climbing. Lords used these chambers for political enemies, family rivals, or anyone who threatened their power. No trials were required, no evidence needed presenting. Just suspicion was enough to earn someone a permanent stay underground. Medieval lords basically invented the ultimate unfriend button, except instead of blocking someone online, they blocked them from existence. The psychological torture began the moment someone realized where they were heading. Total isolation, complete darkness, absolute silence except for your own breathing and heartbeat. But understanding what these chambers were is only the beginning. Who actually built these nightmare holes? Building an oubliette required skilled craftsmen who knew how to carve stone without bringing down entire castle walls. These underground chambers were carefully designed into castle foundations during the 12th through 15th centuries, usually during major construction projects or secret renovations. Lords had to pay extra for these hidden features because they weren't standard castle equipment. It's like ordering a custom basement, except your basement comes with a lifetime guarantee that guests will never leave. The construction process was incredibly secretive. Most workers probably didn't know what they were actually building. Not every castle included an oubliette. Mainly, the larger, more fortified ones had them because smaller lords couldn't afford the specialized masonry work. The engineering was complex. These chambers required vertical stone shafts that wouldn't collapse under the weight of the castle above. Skilled masons had to disguise the entrance mechanisms. Some oubliettes were hidden beneath fake wells or storage areas. Others were concealed under loose floor stones that could be quickly removed. Building one was like creating the world's deadliest magic trick. Now you see them, now they're gone forever. The really paranoid nobles ordered multiple chambers built in different sections of their castles. Maintenance requirements were minimal once construction finished. Just enough upkeep to prevent cave-ins that would crush whoever was trapped below. The secrecy extended to the building plans themselves. These chambers rarely appeared in official castle blueprints or architectural records. Medieval architects had the ultimate secret room feature, except the homeowner's manual came with a body count. When oubliettes were no longer needed, they were often sealed permanently. The chambers were forgotten just like the people who died inside them. Many remained undiscovered for centuries until modern archaeologists found them by accident. Construction was one thing, but actually surviving inside these stone tombs was something else entirely. Survival inside an oubliette meant enduring conditions that would break most people within days. The chambers were designed to be too narrow for lying down comfortably. Prisoners had to stand, crouch, or sit in cramped positions for weeks or months until their bodies gave out. Food and water were rarely provided. Some prisoners received occasional scraps of moldy bread or stagnant water, but only when their captors remembered they existed. It's like being on the world's worst diet plan, where the goal is death instead of losing weight. Many prisoners were simply left to starve in complete darkness. The physical conditions were brutal beyond imagination. Waste accumulated at the bottom of the shaft. Rats and insects were constant companions. The air was stale and thin, making breathing difficult. Some chambers had spikes installed at the bottom to injure prisoners during their initial fall. Medieval interior decorating clearly had different priorities than modern home design. Total darkness affected prisoners' minds as much as their bodies. Without any light reference, people lost track of time completely. Days blended into weeks, weeks into months. The silence was equally destructive. Many prisoners began talking to themselves constantly just to hear human voices. Psychological breakdowns happened quickly under these conditions. Hallucinations were common. Some prisoners screamed until their voices gave out. Others retreated into catatonic states, sitting motionless until death finally arrived. Being alone with your thoughts sounds peaceful until your thoughts start having arguments with each other. Guards could tell when someone had died from the smell that drifted up through the chamber opening. Prisoners who lasted longer often scratched desperate messages into the stone walls using their fingernails until they bled. Getting thrown into these chambers was an experience designed to break spirits before bodies gave out. Entry into an oubliette was usually sudden and terrifying. Most prisoners were pushed or dropped through trapdoors that opened directly over the chamber entrance. The fall into complete darkness was often the last moment of hope before reality set in. It's like taking the world's worst elevator ride, except the elevator is just gravity and there's no floor button for going back up. Some chambers used pulley systems to lower prisoners down slowly, prolonging the psychological torture of descending into darkness. Others simply relied on trapdoors and gravity to do the work. The entrance mechanisms were carefully disguised. Heavy rugs concealed trapdoor openings. Loose stones could be quickly removed and replaced. Some chambers were hidden beneath barrels or furniture that castle servants moved regularly. Walking through certain areas of a castle became genuinely dangerous for anyone who had crossed the Lord. Medieval castles turned floor navigation into the deadliest game of hopscotch ever invented. Once inside, escape was virtually impossible. The walls were smooth stone carved specifically to prevent climbing. No handholds existed. No ladder rungs were carved into the sides. Rope was sometimes reused to drop multiple prisoners into the same chamber over time. The process usually happened at night to maintain secrecy. Some victims were drugged beforehand or blindfolded so they wouldn't know their destination until too late. Even screaming for help was useless. The depth and design of the chambers muffled all sounds from below. Guards walking overhead wouldn't hear anything except perhaps faint echoes that could be dismissed as castle plumbing problems. These disappearances weren't random acts of cruelty, though. There was always a political calculation behind every drop. Oubliettes served as the ultimate political weapon for medieval rulers who needed enemies to vanish without creating martyrs or causing public unrest. Kings, nobles, and high-ranking church officials used these chambers to eliminate threats to their power permanently and quietly. It's like having a delete key for people who annoyed you, except way more permanent than blocking someone on social media. No trials were necessary. No evidence needed presenting. Just the suspicion that someone posed a threat was enough to warrant their disappearance from society. Political rivals were the most common targets. Anyone with claims to thrones, titles, or lands could find themselves taking an unexpected trip underground. Religious disputes during Reformation periods led to mysterious vanishings, especially when bishops needed troublesome priests or reformers to stop asking difficult questions. Family feuds within noble households sometimes ended with siblings disappearing overnight. Rebellious barons who challenged royal authority would simply vanish from court one day. Family dinners must have been really awkward when everyone knew Uncle Robert was probably fertilizing the castle foundations. The fear factor was just as important as the actual usage. Other nobles stayed loyal partly because they knew what happened to disloyal ones. The uncertainty was deliberate. People disappeared, but nobody could prove where they went or what happened to them. Royal courts avoided documenting these disappearances entirely. Plausible deniability was essential for maintaining the fiction that rulers followed laws and customs. The church operated its own oubliettes for handling heretics and religious dissidents who threatened established doctrine. Medieval customer service really took "we'll handle your complaint" to a whole new level. This strategy was more effective than public executions because it prevented enemies from becoming martyrs while sending clear messages about the consequences of opposition. The stories and legends that grew around these chambers often became more powerful than the reality. Folk tales about oubliettes spread faster than actual facts about them. Medieval storytellers described these chambers as gateways to hell where demons lived and tortured souls for eternity. It's like how every old house becomes haunted in neighborhood stories, except these places actually earned their scary reputation. Local legends warned children that misbehaving could result in being taken to the stone pit, where bad children disappeared forever. Parents used these stories to keep kids in line, not knowing how close to reality their threats actually were. Some tales claim prisoners who survived years in darkness transformed into monsters or wild beasts. Others described hearing ghostly screams and mysterious footsteps echoing from sealed chambers. These stories persisted for generations, passed down through families long after the original Ubliettes were forgotten. Certain castles became more famous for their disappearing chambers than for any battles or historical events. Tourism boards definitely didn't include historic human disposal sites in their promotional brochures. Travelers would deliberately avoid castles rumored to have active oubliettes. Peasants blamed failed crops, livestock deaths, and mysterious illnesses on angry spirits trapped in forgotten underground chambers. The psychological impact extended far beyond actual victims to affect entire communities living near castles with these reputations. Even when chambers were sealed and abandoned, people claimed they could still hear voices calling for help from underground. These stories served the original purpose even after the oubliettes stopped being used. They kept populations fearful and obedient. Lords encouraged these supernatural explanations because being feared as someone who consorts with demons was better than being exposed as someone who just murders inconvenient people. But when you compare oubliettes to other medieval punishment methods, the legends start making perfect sense. Regular medieval prisons were harsh, but still functioned within recognizable systems of justice. Prisoners received straw bedding, shared cells with other inmates, and sometimes glimpsed daylight through barred windows. Guards made regular rounds. Food arrived on schedule. Visitors were occasionally permitted. Oubliettes operated by completely different rules. It's like comparing a terrible hotel to being buried alive. Both experiences are awful, but one is clearly in a completely different category of suffering. These chambers had no amenities, no schedules, no contact with other humans. Standard dungeons allowed prisoners to maintain some connection to the world above. Families could sometimes visit. Priests might offer last rites. Legal appeals were theoretically possible. Torture chambers, while horrific, served specific purposes within judicial systems, extracting confessions or delivering sentences. Public punishment devices like stocks and pillories were designed for community shame and deterrence. Everyone could see the consequences of breaking laws. Even death sentences were carried out publicly with crowds of witnesses. Medieval justice was usually a spectator sport where everyone got to watch the final score. Oubliettes served completely different purposes. They weren't about justice, deterrence, or public order. They were about making specific individuals disappear permanently while maintaining plausible deniability about their fates. No witnesses, no records, no graves to mark their passing. The psychological horror was intentional and unique. Other punishment methods ended relatively quickly. Oubliettes stretched suffering across weeks, months, or years of total isolation. The goal wasn't executing justice, it was erasing people from existence while they were still technically alive. Medieval rulers discovered that sometimes the most effective punishment isn't the one everyone sees. It's the one that makes people wonder what happened to those who simply vanished.